So here's a public Facebook post, and I asked this gentleman in this public post, do you want me to prove it's real, that Easter is really not pagan? So he said, go ahead. So that is what I am going to attempt to do. Okay, first let's look at the Quarto Deciman controversy. It is about a special day that was celebrated, the Christian Pascha, as opposed to the Hebrew Passover. It says here that the practice had been followed by Polycarp, who was a disciple of John the Apostle. So we have this going all the way back to the Apostles. Irenaeus says that Polycarp visited Rome when Anicetus was its bishop, and among the topics discussed was the divergence of custom, with Rome instituting the festival of Easter in place of the Pasch, or the Passover. Irenaeus noted, neither could Anicetus persuade Polycarp not to observe what he had always observed with John the disciple of our Lord and the other apostles with whom he had associated. Neither could Polycarp persuade Anicetus to observe it, as he said that he ought to follow the customs of the presbyters that had preceded him. Alright, so where did this debate come from, the information? If you look right down here, you'll see it's from Irenaeus to Victor. If you look up Irenaeus, he's within the first few centuries of Christianity, and he's quoted by Eusebius, who dates to somewhere around the 3rd century, somewhere around 300 AD. The conclusion here is that the churches in Asia appealed to the Apostle John in support of their practice, and it was believed to have been handed down. The other tradition was believed to have been handed down by the apostles Peter and Paul. And Eusebius states that in Palestine and Egypt, the Sunday observance was also believed to have originated with the apostles. So on the one hand, we have John, and there would be other apostles. And on the other side, we have Peter and Paul. So this day goes back to a debate between, I guess, the disciples of these apostles. Now, this debate continued, and it continued all the way until Constantine took over. And Constantine put his foot down and selected a day. So in a letter to the bishops who had not been present, so now we're around 300 AD, this is now when the Catholic Church is going to be formed. So the debated dates are before the Catholic Church, but Constantine is going to put his foot down and pick a date. So Emperor Constantine said that it had been decided to adopt a uniform date, rejecting the custom of the Jews who had crucified Jesus and whose practice often meant that 2 Passovers were celebrated in the same solar year. So this is how Eusebius, about 300 AD, quotes, Constantine. It was resolved by the united judgment of all present that this feast ought to be kept by all and in every place on one and the same day. For what can be more becoming or honorable to us than that this feast from which we date our hopes of immortality? So he is saying that this feast celebrating Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection is, particularly his resurrection, what his hope of immortality rests on. This tells me that Constantine very well might have been saved. Should be observed unfailingly by all alike, according to one ascertained order and arrangement. And first of all, it appeared an unworthy thing that in the celebration of this most holy feast we should follow the practice of the Jews, who have impiously defiled their hands with enormous sin, and are therefore deservedly afflicted with blindness of soul. For we have it in our power, if we abandon their custom, to prolong the due observance of this ordinance to future ages by a true order, which we have preserved from the very day of the Passion until the present time. So the Passion, the death of Christ, his burial, and his resurrection. And here we have a history going back to the apostles of a debate between those who lean towards apparently a Jewish Passover for the Christians, and others towards a Resurrection Sunday Passover for the Christians. And when we get to Constantine, this gets decided on Resurrection Sunday. And so there is no pagan origin here. The origin goes back to the apostles, and we have a wonderful history in the first few centuries recording the witness and celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, dating all the way back to the apostles. That's a wonderful thing that we have this historical evidence of the resurrection going all the way back to the apostles. All right, so let's look at the other Eastern traditions, Easter traditions. Now, Easter eggs go back a long way, but their actual official adoption is here. The Christian Church officially adopted the custom regarding the eggs as a symbol of the resurrection of Jesus, with the Roman ritual, the first edition of which was published in 1610. All right, but which has texts of much older date containing, among the Easter blessings of food, one for eggs, along with those for lamb, bread, and new produce. So the point here is Easter eggs are a tradition, and there is no apostolic indication that Easter eggs go back to the apostles. So Easter eggs do have some pagan origins if you look earlier in the article and later in the article. So, you know, the Easter egg part, you know, can be debated. You know, its paganness can be debated. All right, next topic is the Easter Bunny. So our idea of the egg, you know, eggs and the hare went to the U.S. in the 18th century. Protestant German immigrants in the Pennsylvania Dutch area told the children about the Osterhase, sometimes spelled Osterhase. Haas means hare, not rabbit. So bunnies, you know, come from different places, but there is no apostolic first couple of centuries strong grounding in Christianity. But we do see that the resurrection of Jesus Christ and a day to celebrate that, well, we certainly have it going back to the apostles and Constantine deciding on that debate. But the eggs and the hare have a later date and really come from more this the split between the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, it seems like. There's an article on the Bunny Trail, and I'll try and link these when I upload the video, and this guy makes it clear that he thinks it's really not connected to paganism, but on the other hand, he also shows its origins have a fairly late date and probably mostly originates in this country from the Pennsylvania Dutch. All right, and the last thing I'm going to cover is the Easter bonnet. And the Easter bonnet is very late. The English tradition of new clothes at Easter has been noticed in the late 16th century reference by Peter Opie. Easter bonnets are fairly recent, and the Easter bonnet is any new or fancy hat worn at Easter. By tradition, it represents the tail end of a tradition of wearing new clothes at Easter. So, and to this, it goes back to maybe the 16th century. That's not apostolic either. And the links are in the Wikipedia. So the resurrection, Easter is not pagan in origin. The eggs, maybe you can make some connection to that. The bunnies and the bonnets, these are all later. The date for Easter originates back to the apostles, and it looks like it originates back to the difference between the apostles that were more following the Jewish traditions. Jesus came to the Jews first, and the Gentiles seem to be more focused on the Sunday, the day of Jesus' resurrection, for the date for Easter. So that's it. It's not pagan. Thank you for listening.